From aged opera houses harboring fascinating histories alongside the peaceful spirits of their performers since deceased, to weathered hospitals turned apartment buildings, whose renovated halls are purportedly still stalked by the tortured souls of those lost in surgeries many years past. Are you sure you're ready to brave our fourth list of some of the most chillingly haunted places in California? Number 5. The Robert Louis Stevenson House. The Robert Louis Stevenson House, located off of Houston Street in Monterey, California, is a historic two-story Spanish-style abode notable for its hosting of the Scottish author from which it derives its moniker. Historically, an early residence was constructed on site in 1836 under Don Rafael Gonzalez, who acted as an administrator of customs for the local port. From 1856 through the early 1870s, merchant Juan Girardin would open a general store from the house's first floor, while residing on the floor above with his wife Manuela. Following several additions and expansions, the property would be re-established as the French Hotel, after which its spare rooms were rented out, and in autumn of 1879, Robert Louis Stevenson would stay on site and would remain a permanent resident while recovering from ill health. In 1937, the expanse was purchased under Mrs. C. Tobin Clark and Edith C. Van Antwerp, who would preserve the lodging as memorial to Stevenson, and in turn, who would later bestow the site upon the state of California, after which it was re-established as the Stevenson House in the author's honor. This aged abode remains open into the present, offering a wealth of Stevenson memorabilia, a mountain of educational materials, and, as some tell it, a slew of ghostly activity, with those frequenting its bounds reporting random objects sighted moving on their own or even floating in midair, instances of doors opening and closing on their own as if someone unseen is passing briskly through them, and disembodied voices heard from vacant rooms. The most popular legend surrounding the old Stevenson House intertwines with history to tell of how in 1879, Juan Girardin would succumb to typhoid fever and would pass on, after which Manuela was left to care for her two grandchildren, who also caught the fever. Sadly, Manuela would contract the disease herself and would perish while tending the children. However, on a brighter note, both grandchildren would survive. A woman in black, clad in a high-lace collar, suspected to be the spirit of Manuela, has been sighted hurrying about the property, most frequently near the old nursery, forever vigilantly keeping watch over children who grew up and moved elsewhere over a century past. Number 4. Linda Vista Community Hospital. Linda Vista Community Hospital, located off of St. Louis Street in Los Angeles, California, is a former medical campus initially purposed to treat employees of the Santa Fe Railroad that, following its closure, would gain popularity as a rather ominous filming locale. Historically, through the autumn of 1905, the original Moorish-style hospital building, designed under Charles Whittlesey, would open its doors as the Santa Fe Coast Lions Hospital. In 1938, this original structure was replaced with our current Mission Revival-styled building, which was designed under H.L. Gilman. And in 1985, the campus would be re-established as the Linda Vista Community Hospital. Unfortunately, from the 1970s and onward, business at Linda Vista would begin a slow decline and would never fully recover. Through the 80s, its mortality statistics would plummet due to the number of gunshot and stabbing victims it was treating from surrounding neighborhoods. And in 1989, its emergency department was forced to close its doors in financial ruin, following its continued treatment of literally countless uninsured patients. Over the following year, Linda Vista staff would begin seeking employment elsewhere, and in 1991, the site would cease all operations. Following its closure, Linda Vista would act as a popular stop for high-profile paranormal investigators. In 2006, it would be honored on the National Register of Historic Places, and in 2011, the complex was purchased under Amcal Multi-Housing Incorporated, after which its main building and nurses' dorms were transformed into the Hollebeck Terrace apartments. Rather tragically, the whole of Linda Vista grounds are rumored to be haunted by the countless souls of the many who died traumatic deaths on site, and those who have braved them have reported extreme temperature fluctuations, disembodied footsteps heard from empty areas, and phantom screams and cries heard from former emergency and surgical sites. Through the filming of the pilot episode of ER, in Outbreak, End of Days, and Pearl Harbor, all of which that had portions shot within Linda Vista, both cast and crew members would later tell of encounters with menacing, shadowy manifestations, and of a strange humming sound heard constantly on the winds with no discernible source. Lastly, the ghost of a former orderly has been spied making rounds, a spectral little girl has been sighted in the surgical room, and the entity of a mysterious young woman has been observed pacing about the 3rd floor. Number 3. Highway 101 out of Prunedale. Highway 101, spanning the west coast of the United States, is a lengthy, scenic, and foreboding drive that we've covered in many of our uploads, from Newport to Cannon Beach and into Washington, but the segment we'll be focusing on today lies just out of Prunedale in California. And let us tell you, as always, 101 has come through with an absolutely nightmarish legend once again. Historically, in 1894, the Prunedale Post Office was established under one of the region's earliest settlers, Charles Langley, a banker out of Watsonville, and in 1908, this office would close for a time. In 1931 and 32, the Prunedale area would welcome its most ambitious development in the form of the laying of Highway 101. In 1946, 101 was widened to 4 lanes, and as life was breathed back into Prunedale in 1953, its post office would reopen its doors. Through the 1990s and 2000s, the speed limit on 101 through Prunedale was reduced to 55 miles per hour, and covered as a traffic safety corridor due to ongoing collisions. Also through the early 2000s, the segment would welcome the addition of the San Miguel Canyon overpass, and in recent years, as traffic-related fatalities were shown to have been significantly reduced, the zone speed limit was once again raised to 60 miles per hour. 101 through Prunedale remains open to through traffic into the present, and acts as a primary means of transit across the area. Chillingly, long-standing local legends tell this portion of 101 and the connected 156 east to San Juan Bautista are marred by strong supernatural activity courtesy of the area's many car accidents and worse, and those traveling both stretches have reported ghostly voices heard over radio static, strange patches of mist that seemingly follow lone vehicles, and encounters with phantom hitchhikers that, when picked up by the unsuspecting, always fade away mid-drive. The most famous legend surrounding this area tells of a patch of trees off to the side of the road somewhere close to where 101 meets 156 into San Juan Bautista that's either haunted, cursed, or both by the ancient spirit of a powerful witch. It's told that if one flashes their lights into said patch of woodlands, that they will behold the witch and all of her horrors, and might also spy ghostly little children with bloody sockets where their eyes used to be, who some say are the tortured souls of her many victims. Additional reports detail the finding of animal corpses and of ritual sites off the road's shoulders, and terrifying instances in which the witch manifests suddenly in the middle of the road, which some claim has resulted in a number of the region's fatal wrecks. Number 2. The Amargosa Opera House. The Amargosa Opera House, located off of Death Valley Junction in Death Valley, California, is a historic venue and cultural events center contained within the Death Valley Junction Historic District that, in recent years, has grown in popularity amongst paranormal researchers for purported on-site supernatural happenings. Historically, our Opera House building was constructed in 1923 as part of a borax mining company town in Amargosa and would namely be utilized to show early films. In 1942, nearby Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad tracks would be dismantled and shipped off to Egypt to be utilized by Allied forces through World War II, and without the point of contact, slowly the old township would die out, with its various buildings, including the theater, or what was at the time called Corkhill Hall, being passed through a number of owners. Through the 1960s, history and local legend intertwined to tell the story of one Marta Beckett, whose car, it's rumored, broke down at the junction. During her wait, it's told Marta peered through the keyhole of the weathered social hall, and it was at that time a new dream would begin to manifest in both her heart and soul. In 1967, Marta would rent the hall out, after which she would issue a slew of repairs and renovations. In 1970, journalists from National Geographic would catch Beckett holding a performance within the hall by herself and without any form of audience, and following profiles issued under both Nat Geo and Life, an international interest would grow around the humble performer and her grand venue, after which Beckett would perform for the likes of Ray Bradbury, Red Skelton, and more. More recently, ballet dancer Jenna McClintock would sit through a performance at the Opera House when she was all of 6 years old, which would inspire her to begin training in her art, and once she had grown into an adult, she would actually return to thank Marta, but would end up staying on to maintain the tradition of running the operation. In 2016, Jenna would formally retire. The Amargosa Opera House and its hotel remain open into the present, standing as the last vestiges of civilization in the once thriving community, while offering an eerie ambiance and setting that feels as if it's only visiting our world, displaced from a time long since past. More infamously recognized by locals as Spook Hollow, the whole of Opera House and hotel grounds are rumored to be haunted by spirits tied to the history of the town, and those braving their expanse have reported doors that open and slam shut on their own, instances of electronics failing or of fully charged batteries dying spontaneously, and the constant, unnerving feelings of being watched, followed, or even of being touched by a presence unseen. Several informal investigations of the property have yielded high EMF levels, EVPs containing numerous voices at once, sometimes in conversation, and instances of mediums picking up on abundant otherworldly energies near, while other accounts detail items spied moving about on their own, or even floating in midair, and the disembodied sounds of a crowd heard emanating from the weathered hall when it's completely closed and locked up for the night. Lastly, Marta passed on from this world in 2017, and more recently, a number of reports from those exploring her beloved recreation have told of feeling as if they were within her lighthearted, gentle, and somewhat motherly presence. Number 1. The Glen Tavern Inn. The Glen Tavern Inn, located off of North Mill Street in Santa Paula, California, is a popular historic lodging tucked away around 12 miles from the Pacific Ocean, within the Santa Clara River Valley, that, in 1986, was listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and that's now renowned as a landmark under both the city and Ventura County. Historically, this aged structure was first completed in 1911, under prominent architects Burns and Hunt, with funding handled by a collection of notable townsmen, and the project placed on land directly adjacent to the train station in order for the new business to benefit off waves of incoming travelers lured amidst the oil boom. Through the 1910s, Hollywood would set its sights on the valley, during which time a number of notable names, including Jennings Bryan, Ignacy Paderewski, and later Randolph Scott, would frequent the hotel's bounds. In 1919, the city would sell the hotel to one Charles Estep, and under the crushing pressure of actually being unable to accommodate all of the guests wanting to stay on site, by 1920, Estep would complete a conversion of the old attic into an additional floor for guests. As black gold was found elsewhere, local wells dried up, and Hollywood moved on, Santa Paula would begin to focus on agriculture. In June of 1943, amidst World War II, the U.S. Federal Public Housing Authority would lease the aged structure from Estep, after which it would be converted into a women's dorm, and in 1946, following the ending of the lease, the hotel would once again open for business. Through the 1960s, as popularity in rail travel and commerce decreased, the hotel's business would dwindle. Over the years, the site would change hands a number of times, eventually settling in for use as a flophouse. And fortunately, from 2005 to 2007, the Jeanette Investment Group would step in to issue a slew of renovations and refurbs, even so much as battling an uncontrolled fire mid-project to reopen the establishment in full. Most recently, in 2008, the Glen Tavern Inn was awarded recognitions under the U.S. Senate, Congress, and the California State Assembly for their impressively successful restoration. The Glen Tavern Inn remains open into the present, offering luxurious accommodations, unparalleled dining and drink options, and, according to legend, a slew of restless spirits, with both staff and guests reporting disembodied footsteps heard throughout vacant halls, extreme cold spots felt in the heat of summer, and encounters with a range of full-bodied apparitions in both staff uniforms and guest or business clothing spanning the establishment's years of operation. Chillingly ironic, the Glen Tavern Inn's motto stands as, "Where the past comes to life." In July of 2007, the Ventura Paranormal Society actually held an investigation of the expanse. In 2013, it was featured again on Ghost Adventures, and once more in 2014 on The Dead Files, during which, on each investigation, a slew of supernatural findings were uncovered, including high EMF levels, chilling EVPs, and extreme temperature fluctuations. One more popular legend surrounding this prominent lodging tells that through Prohibition, it was utilized as a speakeasy, with its third floor acting as a brothel, and its bounds playing host to the likes of all sorts of nefarious characters. While to date, no findings to support these claims have ever actually been uncovered, and it's now suspected that these stories were simply made up through the 1980s to promote the property's haunted history. This hasn't stopped persistent reports of encounters with manifestations in garb of both gangsters and working girls, of the sounds of phantom gunshots, and of the noises of glasses clinking, of old-timey music, laughter, and of a party that seemingly emanate from just beyond the mortal realm. A final fable surrounding the Glen Tavern Inn tells that long ago, a gambler was murdered over a game of cards on site, and his ghost has both been known to appear and also to make its presence known by creating wafts of phantom tobacco smoke. Taking its fascinating history into account and coupling it with such a formidable range of purported paranormal phenomena and associated ghost stories, we felt the Glen Tavern Inn was the perfect choice as this list's most haunted place in California. Thanks for tuning in for our fourth list of some of the most chillingly haunted places in California. If you enjoyed our histories and ghost stories, subscribe to our channel, like this upload, and share us with anyone you feel could use a good scare. We'll catch you next time.